Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Azkai here, bringing to you another video for Conqueror's Blade published by Porus Interactive. This is going to be a PTR update. Now, we have a bunch of balance changes and mastery coming through on the PTR, and I'm going to read to you the white paper. So, for the balance adjustments, we have polearm infantry brace adjustments. Imperial Pike Guard, Pike Militia, Demez Pikemen, and Village Watchmen. Attack range remains unchanged in Brace, but will initiate attacks earlier when enemies are about to enter the attack range. Again, just a minor thing. Probably makes it easier to attack units who are coming, well, charging in really fast. So this is probably something to do more with cavalry, who tend to end up hitting the polearm units as the polearm units are hitting them, which normally shouldn't be so heavy-handed, how to say, because a lot of the really fast cavalry are blitzing these units first and foremost. But I would also say is these units are not dealing enough damage to kill the cavalry, which is really the more important thing. The speed bonus damage cap from brace and brace attacks increased by 300%, with the minimum speed requirement for the enemies affected by the speed bonus increase from 4 meters per second to 9 meters per second. How this is written, I don't think they're tripling the damage of the brace. How to say, I estimate the maximum amount of damage, or the maximum amount of damage, it's kind of like, put it like this. I believe that the speed bonus damage cap is about 400%, meaning that we see roughly around about 5 times the damage versus against high speed units versus basic attacks on low speed units. That's roughly around about a 5, probably 6,000 damage against high speed units currently. Adding on another 300% means that instead of 400%, it's now 700%. I do not believe that they're going to increase 400% to 1200. I think it's just changing from 400 to 700%. So we're going to see probably damages in the 12-ish thousand range, probably definitely above the 10k mark, because that's how I've kind of estimated it. Now, the thing here is that they also changed the minimum speed requirement for enemies affected by the speed bonus, increased from 4 meters per second to 9 meters per second. So infantry units in particular are not traveling at 9 meters per second. There is very few units that would even approach that. Not say that there isn't, but I think the 9 meters per second is exclusive for cavalry units, because there is, in my mind, I don't think there's any unit that travels that fast. Now, this brings a lot of caveats that I don't like. First of all, is the relative calculation for how speed bonuses work. Because I know that the bonuses don't kick in all at once. You're not traveling at 4 meters per second and all of a sudden you're taking like 5 times the damage. No, you're moving at 4 meters per second and you take like twice the amount of damage. So instead of taking like 1,000 damage, you're now taking like 2,000 damage. The 9 meters per second threshold implies to me that it either starts kicking at 9 meters per second and you need to go higher in order to stay, or you're going to get the lion's share amount of the relative speed bonus cap at 9 meters per second. So you're going to be taking like 1,000 damage, 1,000 damage, 1,000 damage, all of a sudden 8,000 damage, just at the very end, kind of thing. Which Mechanically, I don't like because it's not relative enough. There is probably relative speed in it. It's just that a whole lump of it will just smack you as you reach that speed, which could be cool because there are definitely some slower cavalry that might get away with going under 9 meters per second. I know that a lot of cavalry have kind of been pushing for like really high speeds, but one particular cavalry that I can think of that maintains a really relatively low speed is camels. Camels don't are 7 and they don't receive speed bonuses um, when in charge. I forget I forget that they changed the name, but it used to be called Stampede. This is really scary for that scenario. Now, continuing on, we have Medal battalions. The number of targets for all brace attacks in Medal defense increased from 2 to 5. Absolute crazy change, but there is two things I want to mention. There is the brace attack, and then there is the brace basic attack. When I say brace attack, they kind of mentioned it here, but they have cap for brace and brace attacks, so there's two separate things that are considered here. In this case, for the Medal Battalion, there is a hit limit difference between their brace and their brace attack. Their brace hits 3 targets, while their brace attack hits 2 targets. That's being changed to 5. I think they mean that they're going to change both of them to 5, but the fact that they don't mention that one's 3 and the other one's 2, it's just kind of a misstep for me. I think as a developer, you should know what you're talking about and you should make it clear what you're talking about. Otherwise, I'd probably just drop from 2 and just say 2-5. That way you don't have to clarify on the differences of the attack. But just like to mention that there are differences and that there are 2 attacks when we talk about brace for a lot of these brace type units. It's particularly like those that have the those that mostly polearm units, but this also refers to the Mez or some of the specials cases. The speed bonus damage cap increased by 200%, with the minimum speed requirement from the enemy affected by the speed bonus increased from 2 meters per second to 9 meters per second. This will also stop you from getting one tapped by a random 10k damage hit, which happened occasionally to me as well. I don't know when or how the relative speed damage is calculated, but yeah, I got hit by this a lot. I think everyone did. So the fact that Medals would have such a low threshold is one of the surprising things, but not unexpected considering how it was applied. Now, similar to what I said before, 200% doesn't mean they're doubling the amount of damage because, as we know, I just said, they hit 10,000 damage. Man, that hurts. It hurts a lot. So I think it's around about a 400% increase, going to about 600%. It is increasing the total amount to like a single attack, roughly to probably like 14,000 damage. I want to just say is that the Medal Battalion here is got crazy amounts of buffs here. Not only is the hit limit change from 2 to 5, which is again a 2.5% 2.5 times increase, by the way. This is an increase in power or damage similar to paladins who notoriously got 4 times before they were nerfed to 3 times. But this is kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. Medal battalions will be afraid of, and I'm really scared that they're going to let this through. Hitting 5 targets with Medal defense is it's kind of crazy because already Medal defense is their best defensive option and marginally behind in offensive. But the defense's increase in Medal defense versus the damage increase out of the other two skills were just not adequate to ever use them. So you just left them in Medal defense. Now, if Medal defense only gets the increase of 2 to 5, this means that Carnage absolutely dead. Medal order absolutely unusable. They only hit 2 or 3. I think it's 2 or 3. I think depending on how it works. But this is a this is really upsetting for me because I like how medals are supposed to be designed. I just don't like a lot of the things that have them, particularly armor bonuses. Armor bonus can go up to 1500. I'm not sure if that's has been changed or anything, but I've been told that by Alan that the armor bonus caps out much earlier than 1500. I think he said that only about 500 armor is roughly calculated from his estimates, but I don't I don't see the change from 2 to 5 going through. If that does go through, watch out for Medal. Medals will definitely be one of the most terrifying infantry units you will ever see. And to put that in perspective, Wu Wei hit 5 units for roughly around about 3,500 damage. Medals hit for about 2.5. They don't have to use a skill to hit for almost as hard as Wu Wei's brutal sweep. That's the crazy thing. Maybe about 50% less, but it's still just crazy. You already have issues anyway with Wu Wei dying to Medals in the first place, but that could have been because of the speed bonuses. But we'll see how this plays out. I'm suspecting that the Medal battalions got buffed really hard because they wanted to keep the anti-infantry aspect. Unfortunately, it just doesn't carry over to its other skills, which is sad. For the Brachio Pikeman, the speed bonus damage cap for brace attacks increased by 300%, with the minimum speed requirement for the enemies affected by the speed bonus increase from 5 meters per second to 9 meters per second. Again, similar to above, changes are relatively changing it so that they deal more damage to cavalry and that they kill cavalry. Fort Brachio Pikemen didn't actually have this problem dealing with cavalry. They had a problem with turning, and since they don't face the direction properly and keep getting distracted, they end up not working out very well. They also have a very slow turn rate, so it's very abusable just by circling around them. I think this is just a carry on that just kind of made it consistent. I want to also mention that there are some units that are not mentioned here, particularly the Halberdier Sergeants, Sunward's Phalanx, the Sealer Guards, and my favorites, the Demez Spearmen, Spear Sergeants, and the Samachian Stalwarts. All of these units have similar brace kind of thing, but they're only targeting the polearm infantry brace, which is interesting because I think I think um, they're making it so it's only an anti-cavalry thing and making it less of an infantry thing, which is really funny because this directly weakens their capacity to fight off charges by infantry in particular. Not that there probably isn't a separate bonus against charging infantry or charging units in general, but I just want to keep that in mind is that these speed bonuses were like one of the major portions of their damage, particularly when starving off um, infantry that wanted to like get in really fast. But nevertheless, just keep in mind that Howdiers could be affected by this. They might not be, but um, just keep that in mind. I think some of these changes, I think focusing on the fact that the threshold is told to us to be 9 meters per second um, is very interesting. Finally, for polearm infantry base adjustments, we have the Nemez Pikeman going from maximum unit number increase from 36 to 40. Added the formation type formation, which transitions into brace upon state upon forming. Really cool that they're getting another formation. They'll have, I think, a possibility of 4 formations. You got brace, Shieldtron native, and line. Now with the tight formation, they'll have a 4th formation. Also, interestingly enough, we now have a new record for the most units in a for the most models in a unit at 44. Reason why is the Mez Pikemen get 44, they have nodes that increase their model count. And of course, their model count maximum is 40. Now being changed, I believe their base amount is now being changed to 40. We're going to be able to get to 44. So congratulations to the Mez Pikemen. I do think this change, I really do like unit cap increases, mostly because I like bigger sized units, and I really wish that battle wasn't so quick. That way, units with large sizes didn't evaporate in seconds. Then again, we're still probably going to have that problem. Increasing the unit cap, increasing the unit size will have very marginal effect on these type of units that don't deal damage. That is. Anyway, continuing on. We got another set of balance adjustment. Imperial Pike Guard. Initial health is increased from 6,884 to 7,247. Advanced piercing damage coefficient goes from 62% to 80%. Advanced cooldown goes from 50 to 35 seconds. Increases all defense by 30% during the skill. Of course, really, really big changes for the Imperial Pike Guard. Necessary for the cooldown reduction. A lot of skills don't have such high cooldowns, and they also have a cooldown reduction mechanic in their Imperial Edict. So I suspect that Imperial Pike Guards are going to be more usable by having Imperial Pikes being um, Imperial, their advanced, sorry, being able to be chained off of one another, and I do suspect that was their intent. It is still one of the most powerful infantry ability in the game. It just deals very low damage. Slight damage increase is probably going to hit probably the base amount, probably going to hit the 1100 mark now. I can't, for the life of me, remember how much damage this thing does. Not to mention all of its bonuses it has. But just in case you don't know, I do think that they have an unrecorded hit limit, meaning that they hit way more units than you can ever suspect. So, or could count. I do think the defense increase is probably the most vital part. I think the 8% they get currently is not adequate, plus the 30% should put them in the zone where they're tanky enough to trade with most of the meta stuff, I suspect. We're going to have to see how it plays out. Could be too strong. No doubt that they're trying to. No doubt that it could easily go out of control because of the potential of the advance, and um, the control capabilities will definitely be very effective against units that don't have CC resistance, CC immunity. Continuing on, we have Imperial Spear Guards. Unit maximum number goes from 32 to 40. Mastery Node 5 restore 40 health per second. Changed to 1% of maximum health per second. Mastery Node 6 reduces damage from 5-star units by 200 to 400 points. Mastery Node 7 reduces damage from cavalry units by 200, and it's changing to 400 points. Now, I'm scared of even 1% of maximum health per second. Reason being is that 100 humans demonstrated a very, and again, they only had a 0.25, I believe, 0.25 per second. And they demonstrated the potential for long engagements, lots of skirmishing power, and just downright disgusting performance of their cover commander. The game moves very fast. Even if 1% now is not very much, it still puts pressure on units that don't deal 1% of maximum health per second. Now, what does that mean in hindsight? You're probably going to get a scenario where two Imperial Spear Guards cannot kill each other. Legitimately cannot kill each other. And that is what terrifies me. Because you should never create sustain where the damage incoming is less than the amount you're sustaining, or less than the amount you're healing without cost. Well, I mean, you can have a cost associated, so you can have some logistics thing. Unfortunately, it's just part of the unit, so it's very powerful. The other thing here is that it's not tied to anything, so it's 1% passively, which is, I think, much better than having it tied to either formation or in Cover Commander. I still don't like the premise of the perpetual healing. Of course, for a already durable unit, increasing their resistance against cavalry and 5-star units in particular, I think is just trying to get a super shield unit as a tier 4. I still think instead of having these nodes in particular, you should just make the unit more tanky because the adjustment or uh, these bonuses only working against certain types is, I think, just kind of boulder dash, kind of foolish to have. Anyway, continuing on to Spear Sergeants. Initial health goes from 7,260 to 8,508. Piercing damage goes from 978 to 1,181. Unit maximum number goes from 32 to 40. A quite a big increase. Almost 18%, I believe, for the piercing damage. Oh, sorry. Uh, Other part, adjust cover commander combat style to utilize the spear's length for more aggressive attacks, enhancing attack efficiency. Hitting targets reduce their armor penetration by 12%, stacking up to 6 times. During cover commander, maximum movement speed 5.2 to 7, and includes blocking effect while moving and attacking. Okay, so this is how to say upsetting. I don't like the Cover Commander playstyle because it utilizes too many bonuses for something that should just be either generic to the unit. And personally, it's I don't like having power focus in only to one state. Sorry, I already repeated myself. I don't like how all of the power is focused on to one state. I think instead of Cover Commander only utilizing the spear's length, I think their attack mode should utilize the spear's length. I think all of their attacks should reduce armor penetration by 12%, stacking up to 6 times, regardless of which state they're in, whether or not they're in brace, whether or not they're in formation, cover commander, follow mode, attack mode, all of it. I think it should just be relevant to the unit itself. The fact that it only works during cover commander is really silly to me. Not to mention the other bonuses like um, their passive, which I think is internally referred to as uh, Heldrick something. Might be translated wrong or something. There's also the Mastery 3% healing during Cover Commander, which also is so The tripling down on the cover commander playstyle is unfortunate because I used to use Spear Sergeants a lot and use them in formation in particular as a semi um, semi brace unit. I used to use them against cavalry in particular. I was really good against Keshigs, in fact. Um, though Keshigs would still screw around with my units, and of course any Lancer charge would basically destroy my unit. But in the grand scheme of things, I loved playing in formation, not in cover commander. I used cover commander a lot. It was just a really handy way to keep the unit together. But I used formations majority of the time. I would use formations to fight battles. And I'm gonna just say this crosses over a lot with Shield Maidens. Shield Maidens, for those of you who don't know, has some hidden bonuses. Now, there are also some generic stuff that should be very clear. They sprint to the commander at certain distances, by the way. Unlike other cover commanders, these guys will sprint and ignore enemies. Most cover commanders will attack units to get to the cover commander, no matter the distance. I know men-at-arms are bugged out because they charge units near them, and this change caused a issue with the cover commander no longer working unless they're within the range of their um, commander. This is the same thing with Shield Maidens, but this is not the same as with Imperial Spear Guard or Spear Sergeants, or even in fact the Sealadars, which actually have a special attack when they're close to their commander. But yeah, that's all I want to say on that. Palace Guards are just for the power skill attack method. When using the skill, first charge towards the enemy, then use a shield strike upon approaching. Mastery node 8. Patient Sniper cooldown reduced by 5 seconds, and each time Palace Guards are attacked, reduce an additional 0.3 and to 0.5 seconds. So, I believe when they say Patient Sniper cooldown, I think they're talking about For the Throne. I don't like the names of these skills. Again, blame Mind Games for this, but also blame Porus Interactive for keeping these English names. I think Palace Guards are interesting. The change where it charges towards the enemy first is the interesting part. They walk towards the enemy, they disregard collision. I'm wondering whether or not it'll be another attack. So they'll charge followed by a shield strike, or they just increase the movement speed as they approach for shield strike. So that is one of the things I want to see. Otherwise, not a very good change. I think Palace Guards need a change, and realistically, I would just get rid of Patient Sniper and just slap all of the bonuses straight onto For the Power, and just have it so that activating For the Power just gave them the 40% damage reduction, 5% CC immunity, and of course they just attack straight away. This way, they're more aggressive they're a more aggressive unit rather than the semi-defensive unit that they are. Um, Smashy and Stalwarts. Maximum health goes from 7,252 to 8,432. Piercing damage goes from 1,003 to 1,237. Big increase, around about 23%. Unit maximum number goes from 32 to 40. In brace, successfully blocking reduces damage taken from 12% to 30%. Temporarily, health recovery effect increased from 7% to 9%. Now, let's make one thing very clear. The condition for blocking is not hard, but most of the damage will be blocked rather than actually taken by the Smashing Stalwarts themselves. The healing recovery changing from 7% over 2 seconds to 9% over 2 seconds is a big increase. Still, the condition for successfully blocking is there, but it's not hard. I don't like I don't like any health recovery at all because it just means that units at certain thresholds cannot deal with Smashing Stalwarts. Do mine, you also have to get through their block. These guys also deal quite a bit of damage. Increasing that damage by 23% is significant. And when I mean significant, it is enough where I would be worried that they might be better. Actually, no, I take that back. They are going to be better than most of the polearm infantry now because of the changes to the relative speed bonuses. For how I understand, Smarching Stalwarts also have relative speed bonuses with their brace, so they deal more damage to charging and units who are moving fast. So keep that in mind. Again, big changes with the unit numbers. Going from 32 to 40. That's an 8 model unit. That is 25% increase. Crazy amounts of potential. And it is supposed to be a defensive unit, but this is basically the ultimate defensive and offensive unit. Problem is that again, they have the weak spot. They're very vulnerable to flanks, and of course, they don't pivot while in brace. So you must control the direction they're facing. But that can be worked out with skill. I don't like how focused they are on the brace state. I think advance needs to be adjusted. Lower cooldown, much more applicable, gets them to form up more. And their attack mode. The Smashian Stalwarts and the Smashian Paladins both have a special attack mode where they move slower but are more defensive. The Smashian Stalwarts do not have bonuses, do not have these brace bonuses, by the way, while in formation, even though they're technically in brace, and they do not have these bonuses while in attack mode. I wish they did. It just make it more for an even application of the unit, and it wouldn't hyper focus the Starsky Stalwarts to stay in the brace state. However, that is quite common for a lot of units, and I do think they just hyper focus on one thing that the unit is good at and just roll with it. For me, I wish there was a more even hand to how a unit is designed. And of course, I would love it if units were better in more than one form or in more flexible. Anyway, continuing on, we have Imperial Javelineers. I did suspect something. I did suspect that with the changes to the Javelin militias, that the other javelins might be touched. Surprisingly, the Mez Javelineers didn't get touched. But anyway, initial health increased from 6,400 to 7,035. Initial ammo goes from 90 to 120. That's 4 throws compared to the Javelin Sergeants who have 5 throws. Really bad, by the way. Um, I think with all of the ammo increases, I think they can get 7 throws, but again, I haven't checked. Initial piercing damage goes from 1,123 to 1,201. Javelin attack piercing damage coefficient goes from 320% to 350%. Flying shield attack piercing damage coefficient goes from 135 to 150. So about a 10% increase in the damage of their throw and about a 10% increase for about 11% increase for their flying shield attack. Do mind the flying shield attack is also attached to their shield bash, by the way. So that's a bit scary. I like the Imperial Javelineers because they're really good in melee. Because of that, especially because of the changes to when they first got their mastery. Now, what I am upset is the ammo increase. The ammo increase to 4 throws is really bad for logistic limitations, which I think is a key factor when controlling for range units. Being able to throw 4 times, you're not going to be able to. You're not going to get very many, let's say, opportunities to throw in the first place because you're not dishing out a lot of damage with your throws. By the way, the problem is that Imperial Javelineers already are very close in performance to the Javelin Sergeants. Javelin Sergeants only edges them out because they can throw much faster than Imperial Javelineers, but Imperial Javelineers per throw efficiency is higher than Javelin Sergeants, especially against shielded targets, which is really popular. Really popular. Anyway, um, my final note on these balance adjustments is they really want um, shield units to be strong, and I'm really liking that they're getting changed. I don't like, however, is the fact that you're trying to keep them strong on the front line in a way that just makes it really difficult to not have units that deal bonkers amounts of damage. And that is really the one thing that hurts me is that no matter the changes to the Imperial Spear Guards, Marching Stalwarts, or the Spear Sergeants, they're all defensive in nature. Realistically, it needs to be offensive. Imperial Spear Guard doesn't need more defensive, they need more damage to compete against something like the Spartan Chosen. Marching Stalwarts, they got a big increase in damage, got some health recovery as well, so they're more even-handed. Spear Sergeants, kind of weird. They're more flexible because of the cover commander style, but again, they need more damage. They need to hit more than one target, and I'm gonna just put it like this: just give them a stronger attack, whether or not it's just adding in a daze on hit or just more damage in general. Superior Sergeants don't need to be tankier, because if you get them too tanky, you get a problem with their 3% healing. Yes, exactly like the men-at-arms, Superior Sergeants also have 3% healing while in Cover Commander. But yeah, I really wish, I really wish that the developers figure out what kind of game they want, because I surprisingly had this talk with Alan, and he presented the kind of issue with middle balance. I forget what it was called, but anyway, the gist of it is that the the lower the time to kill is, the more tactical the game becomes, but the higher the time to kill is, the more mechanical the game becomes. Meaning that mechanical skill is more important in a slow game than a fast game. In this case, the developers want both. They want high mechanical skill and high tactical skill. Unfortunately, you have how balance works is that you need to trade off one for the other, and this is kind of why the problem we get middle balance, where your time to kill is not low enough for tactical skill to really come in, and your mechanical kills that you don't get enough time to really get your mechanical skills to become important. So I think there needs to be a closing of that gap between how much damage is being outputted and how much tanking we are doing, because we're tanking a lot of damage. Sorry, we're dealing a lot of damage and we're tanking a lot of damage, but there's more damage than there is tank. So units that are defensive in nature needs higher damage to keep in line with the balance. All right, there is still 4 pages to go, and when I say 4 pages, 4 masteries. Let me read out the next one. We got Demez Arbalest. We have Node 1 and 3 being increased piercing damage by 100. Node 2 and 4 increase rate of fire by 12%. Node 5 acquire skill penetrating bolts. Penetrating bolts penetrate 2 additional targets and can stop cavalry charges damage reduction uh, with damage reduced by 30% for each penetration, does not coexist with other skills. Node 6 increase damage to cavalry by 400. Node 7 increase damage to melee infantry units by 400. Node 8 penetrating bolts apply 40% slow to cavalry, lasting 3 seconds. Now, let's me be very clear. The developers could never balance the Mez Arbalest to be good by themselves because there is one big limitation that is crushing. The Chevaliers with the Mez Arbalest retinue is a nightmare. Reason being is because they decided to have a big issue with how the skills buffed the Demez Arbalest and subsequently the Demez Crossbowmen. The one problem is that their charge not only increases their attacks, their fire rate, it also increases the number of bolts they fire by 1. The lance thrust increases their attack speed. These have changed and been adjusted, but I'm scared that essentially what the first 4 nodes do is increase the base performance by a lot. I think it's about a 30% increase in total. The numbers could work out differently, but it's important that they made the bulk of the changes not apply to their base in order to avoid chevalier's crossbowman rise again. Unfortunately, I don't. I think this is going to cause the chevaliers to go out of control again. Now, the penetrating bolts is interesting as well because it says it doesn't coexist with other skills. I think they're referring to double shot. Now, the problem I have is the unit has penetrating bolts unit trait, and that's been nerfed ever since the Impale Doctrine was added. Now, let me give you a little bit of background. The penetrating bolts trait originally allowed the Demez Arbalest to hit 1 additional target, but it dealt 50% less damage. This is the same thing that happened with Pavis, but they also had the penetrating bolts trait, but that's been changed over time. Now, the thing that gets me annoyed is that when the Impale Doctrine was added, they made a global change to how penetrating bolts worked because of the Impale Doctrine caused a is causing a global modifier effect. Now, I'm not sure how either of that's going to interact with penetrating bolts, but to simplify, the potential for this is up to 5 targets. But again, reduced 30% each time it hits a target. So you're going to get 100, 70, 40, 10, and then 5. 100, 70, 40, 10, then 5. That's the potential. The other thing that I'm worried about is that if they didn't code this correctly and didn't fix the impale doctrine, they're going to get a problem where it interferes and it gets reduced by 65%. So in the end, you're just going to have 100, 35, 5, 5, 5. Because that's what's happening now with the impale doctrine. The impale doctrine caused their penetrating bolt trait, instead of reducing it by 50, reduced it by 65%. So natively, they hit one additional target, but only for 35. And when you add the impale doctrine, it goes 100, 35, 5. Now, this also gets me into the question of this penetrating bolt trait, 2 additional targets, reducing by 30%. Is this an override, or is it going to cause more issues? So again, I have lots of questions of how this works, and I'm really annoyed that they're not mentioning any fixes for this. That being said, I'm really wondering how how you're going to get 5 targets stacked up on top of each other, because one of the problems with how penetrating bolts trait also works is after the first target, the projectile doesn't keep going. It only, it keeps going only for a certain distance. It it doesn't keep going until it hits 5 targets. It actually stops after a certain distance. This is not a long distance. This is a distance about the length of a pike, which is, I would say, roughly around about 4 meters. It's not long. And that gets me worried that we're playing with penetration numbers of additional targets. Like, I'm saying that the unit's penetrating bolts trait, adding on to this, means that during penetrating bolts, they hit 1 plus 3 additional targets. Plus the impale doctrine, they hit 1 plus 4 additional targets. So you have to have 5 targets in a distance shorter than natural collision would allow, which is annoying because it makes it hard to have a high efficiency. That being said, we still have the issue. I still have the issue with the increased damage to cavalry and damage to melee infantry. One of the things that I've always been really annoyed about is how these are applied, because for the life of me, I've noticed that these things are not applied in a way that is ratioed properly dependent on the base damage being dealt. Meaning that the 400 damage could be applied to every single target as 400. So we're dealing 100 damage to the first target plus 400, dealing let's believe the first one 70% damage plus 400 to the second one, and 40% damage plus 400 to the next one, and 10% damage plus 400 to the next one, 5% damage plus 400 to the next one. Or in the worst case scenario, 100%, 35%, 100% plus 400, 35% plus 400, 5% plus 400, 3 times. The difference in this can be massive. And this is also a really big problem of why the Shenji grenades in particular have with the plus 350 damage with against spearman type units. Regardless, I think a lot of things need to be fixed. if we're going to get anywhere near this going to be, well, I do think they're going to be strong enough. Their range is still terrible. They're not going to be used traditionally. I think the Chevaliers is probably going to be the only option for them to be used, but it's a big buff. Is it enough? No. That's the scary thing. Demez Arbalest are really weak. The Demez Arquebusiers didn't turn out to be as good as I hoped. Demez Arbalest, definitely not going to be any good at all, even with all of these buffs. And these are some insane buffs. All right, Rattan Vipers. Increase piercing damage by 100 for node 1 and 3. Node 2 and 4 increase piercing armor penetration by 100 respectively. Now, that's a big increase again. Rattan Vipers have very low attack damage and armor penetration stats, so that is a big increase. Acquire skill. Poison Barrage, the attack with poison a small area of enemies, dealing 1.5% of current health as damage per second. Increase damage to infantry by 400. Increase damage to ranged units by 400. Node 8. Increase Poison Barrage's poison by 300 per second. So not only do you have the 1.5% current health, you also have the 300 per second. Does it stack? No idea. How small this area is this per shot? We don't know. I think this could be really scary, depending on how much area they can cover, and whether or not the poison is persistent. The 300 per second is quite a high base, but if it doesn't stack, it's not really terrifying. But I hoped for more, actually. I think the Rattan Vipers suffer from. I think the Rattan Vipers suffer from a lot of issues as a tier 3 unit. They've got quite an interesting poisoned weapon deal going for them. The accuracy is going to be the main problem, I think. But this poison barrage should be really scary with a 300 per second base as well. So we'll see. We'll see. High health units will be terrified of this unit, I think. Very scary. But nevertheless, I don't think this unit's going to be very. Same with Incendiary Archers. They didn't turn out to be as much of a headache, but Incendiary Archers have a limitation on ammo. These guys probably won't have a limitation on ammo, but their poison effect, unless it stacks, I don't think this is going to be a problem. But nevertheless, continuing on, we have Iron Cap Arquebusiers. Increases piercing damage by 100 for node 1 and 3. Increases rate of fire by 12% for 2 and 4. Acquire skill Rapid Fire. Significantly increase rate of fire for 12 seconds. Node 6, increase damage to cavalry by 400. Node 7, increase damage to melee infantry by units by 400. Node 8, during rapid fire, randomly throw firecrackers to cause area damage. Kind of crazy how they get free Shenji grenades. I believe it's something similar to Shenji grenades. In retrospect, it could be something similar to um, the Outriders javelins, incendiary or exploding javelins. The area it could affect does matter. The amount of damage will matter. Whether or not it causes CC, we have no idea. The AoE potential puts the Iron Cap Arquebusiers higher than even the Imperial Arquebusiers, who, for the most part, have the highest DPS among the ranged units up until tier 4. Unfortunately, that was broken by the harangs. Fully stacked harangs have a higher DPS than Imperial Arquebusiers. Fully stacked, by the way. They actually are equal when you get the first stack. When you get the first stack. And what I mean by first stack, I mean like you get a full bonus of 35%, and then you get another bonus of 35% at like 120 kills. So that is the thing. So pretty scary. Could be a issue with Iron Cap Aquaviziers, but the cooldown could matter. The chance of trigger could be low, and other things like damage could be low. No CC. Potential is there. I'm gonna have to see. I'm gonna have to have a look at what kind of output it's gonna be. But at the same time, this is a tier 2 unit. They're really squishy, really easy to kill. So I don't think these guys are going to go super crazy. I think they're just going to be very annoying to deal with. Um, could be said about the next one. So Iron Cap Archers increases piercing damage by 100 for node 1 and 3, increases piercing armor penetration by 100 for 2 and 4. Node 5 acquire skill explosive arrows. Shoot arrows with attached firecrackers, causing a small area explosion. Node 6 increases damage to infantry by 400. Node 7 increases damage to ranged units by 400. Node 8 reduce cooldown for explosive arrows by 9 seconds. This could be way scarier. Again, depends on if it has CC, depends on how much damage it deals. But that also being said, I forgot to mention this as well. I don't like these bonuses. These bonuses against certain types causes issues in my head because I think that's how they're being applied. I could be wrong, but my worry is still there. Now, to make this clear, the 400 damage increase is huge. We're talking about tier 2 units that deal. This guy deals probably about 2.5 actually. But this unit, in Iron Cap Archers, they deal 1300 damage, I think. Last time, I believe I checked. 1300 damage. And they're getting an increase of 400 against infantry and ranged units. Not against cavalry, but that's like a third increase. Not to mention we have an increase of like 20% here, which is completely blowing my mind here. So I do not like the direction they're going at because they essentially just gave every single one of these units a game-breaking skill. The is not so much, but Rattan Vipers, uh, ICAP Aquaziers have because of reliability issues, and ICAP Archers definitely. So, for the most part, I want to know what you guys think. I'm kind of scared what the future is for CB. I'm wondering what other people are thinking, and it's kind of crazy to me that we could get a problem where ranged units, particularly ranged units like these, if these explosive arrows work exactly like the Outriders, which ignore block, or like the Shenji grenades, which doesn't ignore block, but easily just explode all around the place, so knocking you on your ass anyway. So I'm kind of scared. I'm kind of scared what the future of CB is going to look like because it's less of a it feels less of a fight and more of a who can blow up the other team faster. as we move towards more burst heavy skills. And that's kind of the problem, where I think CB is naturally a strategic style game because of selection, but the mechanical skill required to, well, not mechanical skills. I probably the tactical skill in CB is dropping because everything is just point and click for massive effect. And I feel like we need more rotations of skills in order to get the mechanical skills to be more present and less of tactical kind of like 100% make it or break it scenarios. I really do think the game is paced too fast, and we really need for a slowdown and a much longer period of fighting. Because I spend most of the game dead or moving to my next fight. I spend very little time fighting, and I'll tell you right now, I mean, my hero skill rotation mostly spent on other heroes. I don't even fight units because there's no point, because my unit will just blow up the person's units faster. Anyway, I hope I don't keep you for any longer. This is the PTR update currently. These are not certain to go through, but I do suspect that because it's on the weekend, we will see these changes kick in on the Thursday. But when I say Thursday, I mean Thursday coming, not the Thursday happening now. Sorry. It's going to happen on the 28th. So I think because it's going to be the weekend long, we're going to see some form of it hit the Thursday on the 28th after the initial round of CBL, which I don't think is going to have a global tournament, but I could just double check that real quickly. But be prepared. A lot of changes. These are big changes as well. Mastery as well. I mean, I think I'm almost out of mastery material, which is kind of funny and scary at the same time. But I won't keep you any longer. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope you guys are still enjoying CB. Please tell me that I'm not crazy, that these changes are massive, and that I'm very terrified of where we're going. Do you like the changes? Do you think the focus on masteries for the lower tiers, especially the tier 2s and the tier 3s, are good? Um, are you hyped for the medals? I'm looking at them again. Or are you hyped for any of the other units that got it touched in the balance adjustments? Please do tell me. But other than that, hope you guys enjoy the video. My name is Azuka. Have a nice day.